Hey, welcome back. So, this week, um, I'm going to give a trigger warning. This week is going to be, it's sexual abuse is what I'm talking about and kind of the mental health ramifications that come from that. So, trigger warning before you continue on. Okay, now that that's out of the way. So, one of the most important parts about my story is that at the age of 3, I was sexually abused, right? That is something that happened at a very young age and had a hand in help forming me to become who I am. There's this story that my mom tells, though, where she said, because my mom knew about it, is right after it happened, my mom found out about it because I was tattletale. So my mom took me to counseling immediately. So, first of all, I think one of the things that has really helped me going forward is that my mom believed me from the beginning. Like there was never a question of did this actually really happen? Never. My mom took what I said and just she believed me from the very beginning. And she immediately sought help. Um, because I was 3, I was willing to tell my mommy, but I wasn't willing to tell anybody else. Um, she did get me, so there were no legal repercussions for the person who assaulted me. Um, she got me into counseling immediately. And I think that that's another big part of the reason that I'm able to have mostly healed from that trauma and then I'm able to sit here and have this conversation right now, right? Like she believed me, she got me into counseling. One of the things that the counselor said when we were talking, basically, the counselor was kind of blunt about something, and my mom was like, "Hey, whoa, she's a victim here." And the counselor turned around and looked at her and said, she is a survivor now. She was a victim, yes. Now she's a survivor. So you can either treat her like a victim for the rest of her life and she'll always be in the victim mentality, or you can treat her like a survivor and she'll be a survivor for the rest of her life. And obviously, at 3 years old, I don't remember hearing those words. It's what I recall of what my mom telling me about it. But I absolutely, positively love that quote. You can be treated like a victim and continue to be a victim for the rest of your life, or you can recognize you're a survivor and live as a survivor for the rest of your life. And there's a mentality shift about that, right? It's two very different mentalities. But one of the things you have to recognize is that life does not happen to you. It happens for you. No matter what is happening, it's happening for you, not to you. Um, so that's the first part of what I want to get out. The second part of what I want to get out is just the terrifying statistics around sex abuse. So, like I said, there were several things that I believe contributed to me being well balanced and not really falling into some of these things, and not becoming one of these alarming stats. So, 29% of survivors attempt suicide at least once. 85% of survivors have at least one diagnosed mental health problem by the age of 30, which I do have that. I have anxiety. So, uh, yeah. So 20% of survivors develop an alcohol and or an illicit substance abuse addiction. 40% of survivors drop out of high school, and 39% of survivors have at least one teen pregnancy. So I will say that I did end up pregnant at the age of 18. I had my daughter like 3 months after I turned 19. So I was a teen mom, but I still finished high school, and she and I grew up together, and that's a whole big story for a different day. But so I am part of some of these statistics, right? Like I am a part of the 85% of survivors that have at least one diagnosed mental health problem by the age of 30. I was actually diagnosed much sooner than that. And I'm one of the 39% of the survivors that have at least one teen pregnancy. I attribute a lot of that to go back to the fact of I was never treated like a victim. I was always treated like a survivor. And I was believed from the very beginning, and I was gotten into treatment as soon as possible. So those three things are things that I would say. I'm just going to grab my little notes here. Those three things are key when something like this happens to a young girl, right? But so let's back up just a teeny tiny bit. And as a mom, I want to know what I can do to prevent it, right? And this is why I had to reach forward, because I have these all written down. So 70% of sexual assault occurs ages 17 and younger. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be abused before they turn 18. The younger the victim, the more likely it is a family member. Less than 10% of child sexual assault victims are assaulted by strangers. 93% of child sexual assault victims know their abuser. It's a friend, it's a family member, it's a community member. Yeah. So all of that is terrifying to me. Like, it terrifies me that you have to be looking out for your own friends and family members and community members to make sure that they're not the ones coming after your kid, right? There are more than 42 million survivors of sex abuse in America, which is, again, terrifying to think about. But that's one of the things that I hope that this is also conveying to you, that if you are a victim, you're not alone. There's 42 million of us that have had this happen. So please don't think that you're alone in that. There are plenty survivors of this out there. So some of the things that you can kind of keep an eye on is there's something called grooming behaviors that the person will start exhibiting. So they'll start paying like extra special attention to the child, isolating them, looking for any unmet needs, and then making sure they're the one to fill them. They treat the child as if they're older. They gradually start crossing physical boundaries, and then they use secrecy and blame with threats to keep their control over the child. So those are kind of some things to start. Now, if you have someone who's paying extra close attention to your kid, Does that necessarily mean that they're grooming them? No. But when you start seeing a, you know, like, oh, I'm checking off more than half of this list, well, then maybe we need to start having some conversations with our little one. The other thing is that I want to start normalizing. I think this should be a movement. We need to start normalizing that it's okay for kids to not hug everyone. Like, it's automatically assumed, and I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, it was automatically assumed that when you walked through the door, you immediately went over and gave your grandparents a hug, right? Like, you got to grandma's house, you went and gave grandma a hug, and then grandpa, or whoever you ran into first. If you went over to aunt and uncle's house, you immediately went and gave hugs to them. No, it's not required. It's not a requirement. It's not a requirement. If I'm over the age of 18 and I don't want to walk up and hug someone, whether they're related to me or not, then I'm not going to walk up and hug someone. Why are we telling our 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds that they're required to go hug somebody? They're not required to go hug them. And they can have respectful conversations, and you can have respectful conversations with the people. You know, if you're going, hey, come here, if you've got Uncle Jim who's saying, come here, little lady, give me a hug. And little lady says, you know, I'm not really a hugger. Can I do a fist bump instead? And he's like, oh, that's ridiculous. Then as a parent, I'm going to step in and be like, no, it's not. And if she doesn't want to hug you, she doesn't have to. She offers you a fist bump. You can take it or leave it, right? And it may mean that you have to stand up to family members. But if they're not going to respect boundaries, even if it's from a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, from a child, then they were never going to respect boundaries ever. And that's a problem. That's a problem not just because they might be a sexual assault predator, but just because people should have boundaries and other people should respect them. And if your boundaries are not being respected, then you should not be in a relationship with that person anymore. Like, the end. I'm sorry. Anyway. So, so that's kind of part of, like, that's just another piece of my story. One of the things that I wanted to mention is that a big part of the reason that I am with the company that I'm with right now is because they were created, the company was created to support the charity. So every time you buy a product from the company, 10% of the proceeds goes to the charity automatically. On top of that, you can give donations to the charity as well. The charity is Cypria, is what it's called. And if you want more information on that, I have a highlight reel or a highlight bubble on my Instagram about it. You can reach out to me directly. I'm happy to answer questions, put you towards resources, whatever it is. If you are a victim and you need help, I encourage you to reach out. Reach out to Cypria, reach out to your local crime victims division. I'm fairly certain that every state has their own crime victims division, and so if you just Google the name of your state, crime victims, you'll find it. In Oregon, it's within the Department of Justice. It's the Crime Victim and Survivor Services Division, and they will get you. They'll get you help. They'll get you pointed towards resources that will help you. So please, I'm begging you, do not suffer alone. Do not be one of these statistics. Get the help you need. All right, you guys. This is my life. Welcome to it. Enjoy yours. Bye.